Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer. This is Sasha. Spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get put in prison. I've also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened while I was in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison, you won't have to make some of the same mistakes I made. You won't have to make some of the same mistakes I made. I could say that over and over again because everybody who's been in prison makes a mistake or two. There's so many unwritten rules and there's so many things that you do, but this was a particularly bad one. Okay, so I spent 6 months at the low security, 3 months in the hole, 2 years at the medium, finished out at the low. At the low, there were a lot of fights. There are no cameras in any building. It's not an open pod, so you'd see a tremendous amount of fights. At the medium, there weren't as many fights as there were at the low, but there was a higher level of violence and response. At the low, you didn't have to worry about gangs jumping somebody out as much. It wasn't as much of a thing. But at the medium, yeah, that happened a lot. Usually them checking in one of their own. That's usually how that worked, but there were other occasions where they'd have to take somebody else out. So if you mess with somebody that's in a gang and it's not an organized fight or organized thing, there's a good chance that you're going to be marked. They're going to come after you and get you. Like I've seen, just been walking the track 10 foot away from me, somebody gets 3 people just jump on him and start poking him up. It's pretty scary stuff, you know. Just imagine you're just walking down the street today, just walking down the street, just some guy 10 foot away from you, just 3 people jump on him and start poking him up with steel, leaving holes all up and down, all through all that. That's scary stuff, and it's scary because, like, if you know it's coming, it's a little less scary. But when you're just caring about your business and you see it, it leaves that level of response in you on a different level. So before going to prison, I trained martial arts, a whole lot. I trained 4 hours a day, 6 days a week to get ready. So Fleece Johnson wouldn't get my butt. Back then, that's all we had was Fleece Johnson, and turned out Alabama. So I was a little bit nervous. That's all. That's the only representation of prison I had to go off of. There wasn't any prison YouTube back then. That's why I say, you want to make some of the same mistakes. I wish that there'd been somebody who talked about something realistically without pumping it up like crazy, that could have given me a basis for what to expect. So I pretty much lived just training, just, like, ain't gonna get me. So I love training, though, and something that I continued to do when I got to the medium security was we had mitts. They had a leather shop, an incredible leather shop. This guy named Kevin Crockett, who you've heard of me talk about, made mitts that were custom, better than any mitts you would ever find in any store. Now, you can't have mitts. You can't shadow box. If you shadow box, that's a 200 series shot, which is pretty serious. You can lose your commissary of visits for 6 months. So you'd have to secretly, hit the mitts and everything else, or wait till a cool guard was working, something like that. But that was something that I still like to get into. I still like to hit the mitts. I still had a couple people. I had jiu-jitsu magazines sent in. We trained techniques out of them and stuff like that. And something at the low security, playing around and stuff like that. That's what got me in my first fight over there, was playing around, and somebody came up and basically was like, wouldn't work on me, and I was just calmly trying to say something. They said something that was way out of line. The next thing you know, we're in it. Playing around is one of the rules that you got to watch. Playing around can get you in some big trouble. Some of the worst trouble I've seen people in, other than debts, drugs, gambling, is playing around. Playing around, some people can't play. Some people get mad. And then if you're playing around and somebody is a gang member and you're not a gang member, you leave yourself open to some very bad, consequences to your actions, which is what happened. So at this time, I was in the RDAP drug program. Now, at the medium security, there are cameras everywhere. If you've been inside of a Walmart and you see those poles that come out of the ceilings with like that black ball that has a camera that can see, you can't tell where it's looking, but they got cameras everywhere. It's like 50 cameras inside of a pod. Excuse me. And same thing outside in the rec yard, but there are a few blind spots. People know about the blind spots, like the TV room. There's a diagonal angle that they can't see, the cameras can't get to. In the cells, they can't see in the cells, especially put up a sign on the window. Out on the yard, the bathroom that's on the yard, that's a place, but And that's part of why there were more fights at the low. People could get away with it, but the violence was nowhere near. It was a million times different at the medium. So what happened was, people got to know like that I was like the karate guy or whatever. Because there were certain times that, out there I'd, be training. There was a guy there who was a Hapkido black belt. And we'd mess around, playing around. There was a handball court, and we just do like light, touch sparring out there. And people got to know about that. Some of the people got to know about it and heard about something that had happened at the low security. So, sometimes people would ask me, show them something, like, show me something. MMA guy, karate guy, and I had basic training. I was not an expert by any means. I got a good base, but so far from what people probably thought that I was. Like, people probably thought I was like, some type of, expert or something like that, like Bruce Lee type of dude. No. Trained at a good base, but that was it. So this particular time, this guy out there just approached me. He said, "Yeah, you're the guy that does the karate." And like, almost it was like he's laughing at me. And he kept asking me questions, and I was answering his questions, politely. But at the same time, I felt like he's kind of laughing at me, like, "Hey, you don't know nothing." Like, he didn't say that, but it kind of was like that. This fella, I'm not going to say who he's affiliated with out of, respect for that, and that's just something you don't do, especially in recent events. For those of you guys who do not know, there was a YouTuber who was slain inside of, I believe it was a tattoo shop, for saying the wrong stuff. So there's certain things you do and don't say on here, so that's something I'm not going to say, personally, because it was, but anyway, so he's asking me, basically show him something, and there's something that's called a ridge hand. A ridge hand is part of your hand right here, and I can take my hand from here to there, but I turn my whole body from the feet down with it. It's basically like throwing a hard hook. You've seen those short left hooks that knock people out? A ridge hand is like that, and the part of your hand that you hit with, a lot of karate, a lot of the stuff that I did in it, I would say 90% of it was useless, but the 10% that was useful was actually some pretty cool stuff. Ridge hand, from here to there, you can knock somebody out. You can. So what I would do was I would have people to show them, I'd have them put their own hand against their neck. And then I would take my hand and hit my hand. And from my hand hitting their hand, the impact would hit their jaw still, enough for them to feel the force. And I do it half speed, usually. This time, this guy's laughing at me. Now, this guy looks the part. Got tattoos all over his face and everything else, all the way up and down. And I'm like, okay, I said, now clench your jaw. I said, and he's like, you can't do nothing for that amount of space. I said, just make sure you clench your jaw, okay? He's like, whatever. And instead of going halfway, I went pretty much as hard as I could. My hand hit his hand. He fell backwards. He was starting to fall, and I caught him as he was falling. And his eyes were white, like his eyes had rolled back in his head. And he's like, it's almost like he's having like a 10-second seizure, but that doesn't make sense. But his eyes were white, like they were, and he's falling back, and I'm like trying to keep him from falling. Then his eyes flipped forward, and he says, I said, dude, are you okay? He said, get away from me. You could kill somebody with that. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. And he just, that was that. And now where this took place, what they call indoor rec at the medium security, it's a joke. It's about 20 by 30 foot area. Then there's a little Sally Port type area. It's like about 8 by 8 foot. And then there's the pool tables and stuff, which is probably about another 40 by 20 foot area. This happened in the little place in between. That's where there are no cameras. Had him step in between there and did that. Now, there are no cameras in there, but I'm looking around and there's a couple people that looked over. I am in the RDAP drug program, first off. If this gets brought up, even though it wasn't a fight, even though it wasn't intentional and all that, I lose my year off for the RDAP drug program plus the 6 months of halfway house. I'll be spending 18 more months in prison. But worse, more importantly, I have just assaulted a gang member in which he looked like a wuss. It looked like I got him. Like I popped him, like I got the best of him. There's a big thing with pride and ego in prison and reputation. it's everything among certain people. So I'm like, uh-oh, I messed up. And I went back to the unit, and I didn't know, I stressed to death. And now I'm in the drug unit. My buddy Armando, he's number 2 for the Pisces. He was my cellie when I was up in the unit above it. He's number 2 for the Pisces. That's like the strongest force on the yard, pretty much. Even though it's not technically a gang, it's a gang for Mexicans not in a gang. That was the most savage, get stuff done group. They put 5 on 1 at a time, and they go after people when they go after people. So, you know, he knows about like the stuff and repercussions. I talked to him. He said it should probably be okay. And I said, man, I said, you know, the guy though, because where he is, you know, high rank in the Pisces, the shot callers, the leaders of each group, speak with each other. They have to speak with each other. There's always petty stuff between the members of each group, and 99% of the time it gets resolved. Sometimes they say, I want a one-on-one, and what happens is the shot callers of both group go stand outside a cell, the 2 people that have a problem, fight it out. That's the end of it. And that's how like an organized fight happen. You can't just go fight because you could cause a problem for your whole group, whole race, whole whatever. So that's a big thing with that. But Armando is like my brother, you know, amigo. That's what there's. I can't tell you how many Mexicans there were on the yard. Amigo, everybody called him Amigo because I called him Amigo. I had nicknames that stuck with people. But man, and I said, you know, could we go talk to dude? You know, I said, you know him. And he's like, yeah, we can do that. So we end up going and we go to talk to the guy. And he's like, hey, says, my friend here, he said he has a problem. He means no disrespect, but, you know, he want to make sure he has no problems with you. And I said, yeah, man, there was something that happened. I said, he's like, what's going on? I said, well, you know so-and-so. He said, that was you? And I said, yeah, it was. He says, oh, man. He said, you know that stuff. And I said, I've trained a little bit. You know that anytime you say that, like, people think that you know more than you do. Like, if you're being honest and you're like, I know a little bit, like, they think that, like, you're lying. But I really only did know a basic amount at that time. But, you know, it seems like you're just being a humble guy, and they think that you're that much more. And so he said, you mind teaching me some of that stuff on that? I said, yeah, absolutely. But just to clarify, we're good, right? I'm not going to have to worry about, you know, just walking around the track, then all of a sudden, you know, I'm leaking down on the floor. He said, nah, man. He said, we were laughing about that. He said he had that coming anyway. He plays too much. He said he always plays too much. He deserved that. He said, don't worry about it. I might have to get up with you sometime. And there were a couple times after that in which I checked with him to see, you know, do you want me to show you something? I figured, you know, it'd be a nice thing, and also just to double check. Like, you know how when people, like, you tell people, no, you're good, and they keep coming back, they're like, are you sure? That was me. You know, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm not going to act like, you know, some of these people on here act like they were never scared in their life, never anything. I was freaking terrified. I was scared out of my mind. I thought that I was going to be walking one day, and then I just wouldn't exist the next minute. Like, my guts would be all over the place. I mean, certain things like that had happened before that I'd seen, and this was a big deal, you know. It was not something that I thought they could let go, but apparently, since it wasn't like an angry fight, since it wasn't like I called him names and disrespected him and all this, since it was like playing around and it was an accident, it was let go. And there were a number of funny times, but it's going to sound funny too, but like, even though, if you allow me to do something, okay, here's the thing. A lot of the karate stuff, it's like, you're allowing me to do this sequence without you resisting. He allowed me to do that, okay? Now that I train other stuff, I realize when there's a resisting opponent, all that, they're going to be moving. You're not going to get your whole sequence off on them, okay? And I realize that now, but when people ask, well, you know something, show me something. If you allow me to get you in a fully locked Kesugatami pin on the ground, I'm going to hold you there. You're not going to get out. But you're not going to let me just get you in that. That's incredibly hard to get you in that. So it's part of that. People don't think about that part. They just see, well, he got you in that and you couldn't get out. They don't see, well, how's he going to actually get you in that position? And it added to kind of like a gossip rumors and made me sound like I was more than I was. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm really sick. I do all I can to keep it together through these videos. I've been wanting to cough for probably about 15 minutes. I apologize. I'm sorry. I've been trying to do this like 10 times. But anyway, it adds like an aura of mystique to you, to like you're some type of master of martial arts, which farthest thing from the truth. But people don't mess with you. There are other situations that I got in where, I spoke up and I got aggravated with people, where people didn't do something because they thought, well, shoot, he's kind of a smaller white guy. If I get beat up by him, it's not going to be a good look for me. Even though I'm fit, there's guys in there that are monsters. Like, even being fit, like, a reasonable, you're smaller compared to everybody in there is huge. Like, most of those people have been in there for decades just lifting nothing. Like, you would not believe how huge some of these dudes are. So, like, they think that, like, losing it would be bad on their name. So basically, it let me get by with, more stuff. I wasn't out there causing problems or anything. But basically, there were a few situations in which case, a lot of times, I would have been in a fight if that hadn't been something that was hanging in the air, something that made them wonder. There's a mental aspect to fighting. And posturing, a lot of people, like the predators, whenever they go up to people and they start yelling and getting in their face, you can see the person who they're yelling at getting in their face. If there's somebody who's actually nervous of it, you can see they'll start shaking a little bit, like that adrenaline hit you, that pre-dump of adrenaline. And you can have somebody psyched out and messed up. You actually see it in professional MMA when certain guys psych each other out. There's a mental aspect to certain things about it, but I got really lucky on this one. I got really lucky because nothing bad happened to me, and I got really lucky because it was a rumor that kind of like circulated around and kind of like helped prevent me from getting into more stuff. It actually went to the level where guards heard a number of things about me, and I haven't talked about this. There's a handful of fights I've been in. I've only really talked about one of them. This wasn't a fight. This was an accident. I've only talked about one of them. I've saved the other ones for a really long time. But there was something else that I haven't talked about. I had to wait till I was off probation, because this is something that might upset certain people, especially in the prison. There were guards that were asking me to show them stuff. And I did, but it scared imagine if the wrong person walked in and I'm showing them certain things. Like, there was one that actually wanted me to show him a certain choke on him. And I was like, I can't do that. But if we get somebody else here, I can show it on an inmate. Because imagine this, I'm demonstrating, just a rear naked choke on a guard. And the lieutenant walks in. How's that going to work out? I'm going to a USP. I'm getting probably 5 years added to my sentence. But at the same time, like, it was a weird situation. It was a weird situation. But anyway, I'll tell more stories about that. It was a funny, like, weird phenomenon. The first time that I realized something was happening, there were 4 COs. One of them was a compound CO that was really the coolest CO on the compound. He's caught people making wine. He says, you better pour that out by the time I get back. He doesn't put them away. He sent them to their room for the night if they were drunk. Usually you'd get 30 days in the hole and a lot of privileges taken. But it was him, and he's like 5'9", 250 of muscle. They said he was repping 495 for a few. Like, definitely on the Mexican supplements. Definitely, and then just lifting nonstop. It was him and 3 other guards. All look angry, and they call me over. The one's like, "That's him. Come here." And it was during a 10-minute move. Now, you got to make sure people are around. You can't just talk to them in private. That's a no-no. But it's during the 10-minute move. They open the compound every 10 minutes, so you can go to and from places. They said, "You know that stuff?" I said, "What stuff?" Like, had to fight a little bit. I said, I trained a little bit, and they said the same thing. He trains a little bit. And then that's how that kind of started. Now, put you in a weird situation because somebody asks you to show them something and you say no, and then they're pissed off at you, or maybe feel like you're making fun of them. Then you're their target, and they will absolutely make your life hell. If you make guards mad, if there's a certain thing where you embarrass them and make them mad, They will absolutely make your life a living hell. And put me in a very odd position, because imagine if, that could have ended even worse than the other stuff. But yeah, don't play in prison. I mean, it's hard to say that, because people are going to play, but it's something that I've seen so many times. It could be so much worse. But anyway, this was a funny one. It was one of the most scared times I had in prison, I cannot lie. I was terrified. I'm not going to sit here and act like I was hard, did something. I did something on somebody. I told him to clench his jaw. He thought it was a joke. I didn't go half speed. I hit him as hard as I could. His jaw was relaxed, and I popped him, and he fell over. It wasn't anything that cool. I would say a 15-year-old probably could have done the same thing to him. It wasn't something super cool or super anything. It was something that was allowed. It wasn't like I had some kind of kung fu master techniques or anything like that. It was a basic technique that I did not go half speed on. I went on full speed. He took it as a joke, had a relaxed jaw, didn't tense up and brace himself for it, and went out, and it could have ended up very bad. It could have ended up with me not being here. It could have ended up with me being paralyzed. I've seen a guy get paralyzed in prison. It could have ended up in a number of ways, but it didn't. And, I told this like back at the very start, when I first started these videos. I got like few hundred views, but I said a few things about names of the people that were involved, the actual group that they belong to, and that's a no-no. As I said, there's a YouTuber that got slain recently, and that's kind of why I redid this in a different way. Getting ready to go to the doctor, check my ear out, see if see what it's going on with it. Still can't hear anything in it, so if you like the video, press the like button. If not, I have just wasted 21 minutes and 57 seconds of your life, but I truly hope you did. You guys have a good day.